Uh,
Welcome to our presentation. For our project, we replicated a study in which a token economy was used to increase physical activity in adults. Before we begin, we will introduce ourselves. I'm Macy Mercer, and I will be presenting the literature review and the conclusion of our project.
I'm Jordan Furnish, and I will be presenting over the purpose of our study as well as the overview of the original study.
My name is Colleen Peel, and I will be discussing the methods of both the original and the replicated study.
My name is Sean Dotson. I will be looking at the results from the original study and from the replicated study.
My name is Jose Uribe, and I'll be discussing the social validity and the limitations of our study.
According to Hales et al. 2017, obesity affects 39.8% of adults and 18.5% of youth and adolescents. According to Halfin, Candy, and Slusser 2013, obesity causes many health issues such as high blood pressure, breathing problems, joint pains, depression, anxiety, and lower self-esteem. It can also cause heart disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cancers, and osteoporosis, as stated by Halal, Victoria, Azevedo, and Wells 2006. While these are conditions primarily detected in adulthood, physical activity in childhood is an effective method for reducing the chances of acquiring such conditions in adulthood, according to Sebastian and Burnett 2010. Token economy is a contingency management system that provides access to reinforcement after an individual engages in a specific behavior for a specified number of times. The learner will earn tokens, which can then be exchanged for said reinforcer. The behavior, tokens, and reinforcement will all be predetermined in order to ensure clear instruction and availability to the reinforcer. According to Benecki and Moore 2003, this study used token economy, and it was implemented to increase classroom participation amongst young children. By using the token reinforcement, this research replication aims to increase physical activity by using the token economy system.
I'm Jordan, and I will now discuss the purpose of our study. Only 1 in 5 adults in the United States meets the physical activity guidelines according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. In addition to that, individuals with intellectual disabilities frequently do not meet these guidelines either. Sedentary lifestyle can lead to many serious physical and mental health issues for individuals of all ages. Some of these health issues include cardiovascular disease, cancers, diabetes, hypertension, and strokes. Working full-time and being a graduate student requires many hours of dedication in keeping up with the demands of our jobs, writing papers, studying, and meetings with school groups. We all found that much of our lifestyles throughout the day involve relatively sedentary activities. Therefore, we were interested in seeing whether the intervention in the study would increase physical activity levels. Token economies have been used in studies prior to this one and have shown success in increasing physical activity in individuals. This study focused on the use of the token economy to increase physical activity in the form of walking in our daily lives. I will now discuss the original study overview. In the original study, 5 individuals participated in an intervention utilizing a token economy system to increase the number of 50-meter laps during a 1-hour time period, with the goal being increasing physical activity. Participants were given the opportunity to walk for 1 hour every weekday. An APAB design was used during the intervention phase. Participants received 1 token for every lap walked that could be exchanged for preferred items.
This is Colleen, and I will be sharing the methods of both the original study and our replicated study. In the original study, 5 men aged 34 to 67 participated. All 5 of the individuals had been diagnosed with a mild to moderate intellectual disability. Body mass index was calculated to classify each participant as either overweight or obese. The 5 participants were John, a 67-year-old with a moderate intellectual disability. He is diabetic and classified as obese based on his BMI. Paul is 53 years old and has a mild intellectual disability. He is also diabetic and classified as overweight. Jerry is a 37-year-old man with a mild intellectual disability and is a heavy smoker and classified as obese based on his BMI. Elton is a 46-year-old with a mild intellectual disability, and Frank is a 34-year-old with a moderate intellectual disability. This study was conducted at an adult daycare center in Florida where participants were in attendance weekdays from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. The target behavior addressed in this study was the number of laps walked in a 1-hour time frame. A lap is defined as walking from one cone around the other cone and back. Cones were used to mark the 50-meter lap participants walked. During the intervention phases, each participant had their own individual bag to collect tokens in. The rate was 1 token per lap. All sessions occurred between 9 and 10 a.m. on weekdays, and inter-observer agreement was collected in 38% of all sessions by an independent observer. During the baseline phase of the study, at 8 a.m. every day, the researcher would ask participants who wants to walk today. Participants had the choice as to whether or not they wanted to participate. Sessions would last for up to 1 hour. However, participants could choose to stop walking at any time. During baseline, each time a participant completed a lap, the researcher would tell him how many laps he had completed in a neutral tone. No praise, tokens, or reinforcement was given during this baseline phase. Also during the baseline phase of the intervention, participants as well as staff from the daycare center were interviewed by the researcher to determine preferred tangible and edible items that could be used as backup reinforcers. A multiple stimulus without replacement preference assessment was completed for each participant. From the assessment, high and low preference items were identified. On the next slide, you will see the participants' individual backup reinforcers. A token exchange rate was created based on each participant's individual baseline levels. This was done to ensure that everyone had an equal opportunity to earn reinforcers. It is important to note that while reinforcers were unavailable to the participants at the center, they could be accessed outside of the center. Before the first intervention phase began, the researcher showed each participant their personal bag to collect tokens in. Participants then practiced walking a lap and placing tokens into their bag. Once the intervention phase started, sessions occurred in an almost identical fashion as they did to baseline. There were some slight changes made, such as the researcher informed the participant that they would be earning tokens for each lap walked. The researcher also cheered for the participant for 5 seconds upon the completion of each lap. During the intervention phase, participants placed a token in their bag at the end of each lap. They then had the opportunity to exchange their tokens daily or save up for a more costly reinforcing item. In the original study, the only changes made in Intervention 2 was the exchange rate of the backup reinforcers. As in Intervention 1, the exchange rate was based upon each participant's individual numbers of lap walked, again to ensure that everybody had equal opportunity for reinforcement. We had a couple of differences in our replicated study compared to the original one. First of all, we had 5 graduate students, both male and female, ages 21 to 31 participating. Given the time of year and weather conditions, we utilized a treadmill to record our laps. Each quarter of a mile walked was considered a lap. As participants with varying schedules, we opted to choose which hour of the day and days of the week worked best for us to complete our walk with a maximum of 1 hour per day, 5 days a week. For inter-observer agreement, we took photos on our treadmill screen at the end of each walk. The photo was required to have the amount of time walked, distance walked, and date of walk indicated. We then recorded our laps in a Google document shared with all group members. Finally, we provided our own token bag to collect tokens in, and all used a smiley face circle cutout as our token.
This is Jose Uribe, and I will be discussing the social validity aspect of our replicated study and the original study. In the original study, participants completed the social validity questionnaire on the last day of the study. The questionnaire consisted of 4 questions. 1, did the participant walk more than before? 2, Was the walking program enjoyable? 3. Do you feel more physically active than before? 4. Will you continue to keep walking? Questions were scored on a 5-point rating scale, on which 1 equaled strongly disagree, 2 equaled somewhat agree, 3 equaled no difference, 4 equaled somewhat agreed, and 5 equaled strongly agreed. The participants' mean scores in the original study were 4.8 for I walked more than I have before, 4.6 for found that the walking program was enjoyable, 4.8 said that they felt more physically active now than before, and 4.6 said that they will continue walking. In our study, however, our mean scores were 1.2 for I, I walk more now than before, 2.25 for the walking program was enjoyable, 2.25 for I feel more physically active now than before, and 2.5 for I will continue walking. The scores were very different compared to the original study, or we may have just been lazier in comparison to the participants in the original study. The study concluded to be ineffective in respects to social validity.
This is Sean, and I'll be going over the results from the original study and the replicated study. The participants set a baseline and all saw improvement in laps walked in both the first and second token reinforcement phases. There are several things to make note. One is that there are a couple zeros, meaning the participants chose not to walk that day. And the second is that some of the participants showed up late, and that was indicated by a triangle instead of a circle. As you can see in the original study, they had about 44 sessions to walk laps. The results from our replicated study showed that in the first half of the AB study, all 5 participants increased laps walked. But in the second baseline and second intervention phase, only 3 out of the 5 participants showed an increase in laps walked using token reinforcements. As previously stated, our phases lasted half the amount of time from the original study, from 44 sessions down to 22 sessions due to time constraints. Our baseline phase, we had 5 sessions, then our intervention phase lasted about 7 sessions. In this first graph, you will notice that the data is not stable for both baseline phases, but in the intervention phases, you will notice an increasing trend for laps walked. During the baseline 1, for Sean, myself, I walked an average of 9.7 laps and then saw an increase in reinforcement in the reinforcement phase as to an average of 12.7 laps walked. Then once returning to baseline 2, laps walked decreased to an average of 7.6. Then once returning to intervention, the average increased to 9.33 laps walked. You'll notice between session 15 to 17, there are 2 sessions with a 0. That is because of being sick. If you were to take the 0 out from both the baseline and the intervention, the numbers would change to an average of 9.5 laps walked in the baseline to an increase of average of 11.2 laps walked during intervention. In Jordan's data, you can see that her data is more stable. Her baseline phase had an average of 9.2 laps walked to an average of 12.57 in intervention phase. Then again, a decrease in average to 8 laps walked during baseline to an increase of an average of 11.8 laps walked. In both intervention phases, you can see an increasing trend in data for Jordan. Macy's had a significant increase in laps walked during intervention phase. In her baseline 1, she averaged 5.4 laps walked and increased her laps walked to 15.29 during intervention. Baseline 2 is similar to baseline 1, with her averaging 3.4 laps walked, then increasing it to 14.29 laps walked. You can also see that during the intervention stages that her data stabilized. Looking at Colleen's data, you will notice that both baseline 1 and 2 data stabilized, then transitioned to intervention. Her baseline 1 average was 8. Then in the first intervention stage, she increased her laps walked to 8.7. She had one day where she was sick, so she did not have any laps walked. If you removed that 0 during her intervention stage, her average would have been 10.2 laps walked. Then in the baseline 2, her average was 9.2 laps walked. Then you will notice a decrease once the intervention phase started. She only averaged 5.3 laps walked as she was sick 3 of the days during the intervention. But taking out the 3 zeros in the intervention phase, her average would have been 9.25 laps walked. In Jose's data, you see his baseline average was 8, then increased to 10.9 laps walked during the intervention. Him and Colleen from the last slide were the two that in the second baseline and second intervention saw a decrease in laps walked. Jose's baseline 2 average was at 12 laps walked, then decreased to 11.1 during the intervention stage. Jose will discuss some of the limitations when replicating the study that might have caused the decrease in laps walked.
Limitations. There were 5 major limitations that may have had an impact on the data in our replicated experiment. The first and foremost of all 5 limitations was that participant bias may have caused an alteration in the number of laps walked. Several participants stated that they felt more inclined to walk in the intervention stage of the experiment. It is possible that this could have been due to the fact that this particular application had a grade element for the course. The knowledge of the grading element in comparison to the reinforcers in the original individual preference assessment may have well taken precedence as a primary motivator for laps walked. Another similar limitation was the notion that the participants had the means to purchase the reinforcers. This conception between participants may have led to the tokens losing their theoretical monetary value. Having this belief, a participant may have felt he or she was working for an item that can be bought at any time, regardless of their laps walked. Since the replication study was primarily conducted in the winter, participant illness resulted in a total of 6 sessions that were marked as 0 laps walked during the treatment stage 2 of the replication. It should also be noted that 3 of the participants in the original study reported being obese or overweight. One of the original participants reported that he had been a long-time smoker. This is relevant to the replication study because all of the participants in the replication experiment reported being physically active and did not have any unhealthy habits such as smoking cigarettes. Lastly, the participants in the original study were being motivated by a researcher yelling out the number of laps they walked. In our study, the replication study, the participants walked alone during all phases of the experiment. Participants stated that they may have felt more motivated to walk more laps if he or she was accompanied by another person motivating them to walk more laps.
I'm Macy, and I'll be presenting the conclusion. Token economy was the primary motivator for the number of laps walked for all participants involved in the replication study. Regardless of the number of laps lost due to illness, as well as other possible limitations, more than half of the participants involved show higher numbers of quarter miles walked in the intervention stages of the replication when compared to the baseline phase. Therefore, token economy may be an effective strategy used for increasing physical exercise and therefore can be used to decrease rates of obesity. Thank you for watching our presentation, and we look forward to seeing your feedback.